Hey everybody who's here. We're just I'm still getting a few things set up before we start. We have 1 minute. Everybody who's here, Whoa, that's me. Okay. Um, awesome. It's working good on YouTube. We have it on here. All right. I've got 1 minute. Okay, so we're gonna do a pin for both of us here. Um, Bobby Wentz, Brianna Wentz.
Robbie's my mom.
There you go. Yeah, should I pin your mom too?
No, it's okay.
Okay, that's perfect. Now we have both of us. Okay, so it's 1 o'clock. So Tanzi, Anine, Tanashi, hello everybody. Thanks for tuning in for the artist talk for Warpaint with a solo exhibition by Brianna Wentz. I'm Justin Berladive, the artistic director here at Urban Shaman Gallery. I'm mixed Korean Scottish from Peguis First Nations maternally and Ritter River Métis paternally. I'm here today with Brianna Wentz, a Winnipeg-based visual artist who's Swampy Cree, Dene, culturally Mennonite, and Goth, and draws on her own experiences and alternative subcultures to create kinship and reclaim spaces of power and marginalized voices. In the exhibition Warpaint on right now at Urban Shama, Brianna unleashes the demon in the metalhead fangirl, reimagining the metal, punk, and rock scenes through the eyes of radicalized women, non-binary people, and BIPOC folks. So please join me in welcoming Brianna Wentz. Hey,
Hey, thank you.
do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself and what brought you to this exhibition.
Yeah. Um, yeah, okay. Yes, I'm a painter, a visual artist, but primarily painter, working primarily in oils and mural art. Also, I'm recovering from COVID. So if I sound out of breath, I am. So bear with me. Um, but yeah, so this show basically culminated in my experiences of uh, being a part of and kind of like on the outskirts of like alt scenes, but always like strongly identifying um, as like goth or punk, basically like since my teen years, although even probably a bit into my childhood as well. Um, and yeah, it's basically just kind of like grown from my experiences throughout my 20s, starting in art school when I spent a year in Finland, up until now.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about your time in Finland?
Yeah, so I did a year abroad in my third year of art school, when I was 20. Yeah, I left when I was 20, came back when I was 21. Um, and it was because my favorite band, Him, is from Finland, and I wanted to be inspired by the same culture and environment that inspired their work. But specifically, my favorite album, Venus Doom, because it was partially written in Lapland. So I spent a year in Rovaniemi, which is on the Arctic Circle at the University of Lapland.
Wow. That's so cool. I know like Finland is like a big like metal, they have a huge metal scene.
Yeah, it's not even like a subculture there.
It's a mainstream culture.
It's very mainstream there.
Wow.
I haven't checked stats recently, but when I was there, they were like the most metal bands per capita out of the world.
Wow. Sick. Okay, so that's a little bit about you. I was thinking about, in your bio, like mentioning your culturally Mennonite, your Swampy Cree,
Yes.
Dene.
Yeah.
So how does that intersect with the work in Warpaint?
Yeah. So yeah, my mom is of settler ancestry, German and Mennonite, and my biological father is Swampy Cree and Dene. For privacy reasons, I'll just say from northern Manitoba because Manitoba is a small place. Um, but yeah, uh, yeah, I sorry, I just like dumped over my smoothie a bit and I lost my train of thought. um, yeah, how does my identity intersect? Yeah, okay, so I've basically always identified with like like goth and punk subculture. Even since I was a kid, like I used to put on my vampire costume after school, not even to like pretend I was a vampire, just because it felt right, you know? And that's since I was like, I don't know, 8 or 9. Um, and then, yeah, that carried through into high school. And yeah, it was very much, it got into like punk music and, yeah, like the values that came with that. But I like grew up in small towns, and so there wasn't like a culture to go to. Um, and then even yeah, when I moved to Winnipeg, um, which would have been in like my last year of high school, and then I stayed for university. I was in like academia and in like art school, and but they're just like very different crowds. Um, and yeah, I tried to get into like the goth scene and like a bit of like the metal scene and stuff, but um, it always felt like very clicky. And I mean, there's definitely a generation gap, which is like also a factor. But yeah, I always felt like I was like on the outskirts. But when I was in Finland, it was like everywhere. But then I had the experience of being like the only brown person because it's so homogenous there. Um, like it's just so white. Um, especially in the city I was in the north, like it's like I had a hard time finding makeup foundation that was dark enough for me. And I'm not even my complexion's not even that deep. So yeah, I definitely like got some side eye and stuff. I had like a few weird experiences with people who like wouldn't even like engage with me until I told them where I was from. And I guess this was also in like 2015, 2016 when the Syrian refugee crisis was going on. And there were a lot of newcomers coming to Scandinavia, and people were really wary and their racism was really obvious. But yeah, after that, I started like really interrogating um, how how all of these things interact with each other. Um, and of course, like, like metal and punk are known for having their like racist streaks. Like there's like black metal and there's Nazi punk and all this stuff, National Socialist black metal, all those things. And um, there's a lot of complicity as well, because even if they don't, a lot of bands aren't actively racist, they will still like play sets with those bands and stuff, So, but yeah, I was just like thinking about how all of this interacts and things. And um, yeah, I was, um, sorry, brain fog.
Okay, I'm
Um,
brain foggy right now too.
okay.
We're all brain foggy after Vagina Witchcraft after that
Yeah. Um, yeah. Just thinking about how, like, BIPOC folks, queer folks, we need a lot of catharsis. We have good reasons to be there. There's a great quote from this book, which I can't recommend enough, Darkly by Leela Taylor. Um, she's goth and she's black, and she writes about that in this book. That's what this whole book is about. Um, a lot of it is still very applicable to an Indigenous experience. And she says, like, when you're born a person of color, you're born alternative. And that's basically, I didn't read this book until like pretty recently, but that the essence of that is basically the root of this whole series. And a lot of my practice in the last like 5 years. Because I was like the first brown person to be born into my family. And yeah, I think one of the first people to be born into a non-nuclear family unit. And yeah, I can't say that my family specifically has ever made me feel othered, but uh, Mennonites have their own ways of uh, expressing their discomfort. And
which is really, really quiet and like behind
yeah,
closed doors.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can definitely, in hindsight, I know I've always been able to pick up on the vibes um, about aspects of my life that were not uh, traditional or according to the Christian doctrine.
Yeah, so like, the Christian side of things, like, you have the work Slash and Burn, um,
Mm-hmm.
and a really poignant piece in the show. And yeah, like it was amazing to work on that, and with the projection mapping and having James assist on that. And um yeah, like it felt so good to have that in the space. So can you talk to us a little bit about that, and about like the Norwegian church burnings and how they connect to when the unmarked graves were found here, and our burnings here in this on this land. So yeah, a little bit about that, and why you felt like it was important for that to be a part of this exhibition.
Yeah, so yeah, for those who haven't seen the show yet, Slash and Burn is a mural installation that I installed in the smaller media gallery in Urban Shaman. And it is a four-wall immersive mural installation, which features the silhouettes of churches that have burned on or near First Nations communities since the discovery of the graves at Kamloops in 2021. And so um, yeah, it connects to this show because in the early 90s, there was a huge wave of church burnings across Norway. And this coincided with the black metal movement, which was meant to be satanic and promoting evil and terror and all this stuff. Mostly it was a lot of like disgruntled Norwegian teens um, who honestly have great living conditions. And uh, um, yeah, it was also like kind of like riding on the heels of the satanic panic from the 80s, and I guess that went into the 90s as well. But of course, the satanic panic was just, like a right-wing fear-mongering thing, which just demonized nerds. But yeah, and so that yeah, these Norwegian church burnings have been like kind of like an iconic part of like metal history, and um yeah, have just kind of been like held up as being really hardcore. But um yeah, the values of the black metal movement were also like very there was a lot of racism and homophobia. um there was a murder associated with that, the murder of a gay man in Oslo. And yeah, some of the founders of that movement have like, one of them is now like an actual neo-Nazi. And yeah, it's yeah, and of course, like, the church is notoriously homophobic and has been used as a tool of colonization from like day one. So yeah, its role is actively racist in history. And so, yeah, they meant to be satanic, but they really just carried out Christian values. And so, yeah, the church burnings that have happened here following the discovery of the potential grave sites at now many residential schools across what we now call Canada are actually far more anti-Christian than anything that the black metal scene ever produced. And yeah, they're very righteous in my opinion. Um, yeah, they've had it coming for a long time. And yeah, when I first like saw videos and stuff of the church burnings happening um like on social media in 2021, I mean that whole summer of course was like extremely emotional for a lot of us and really difficult. um but yeah, the videos of the church burnings just like gave me like this catharsis that I have not known before or since. Like I I don't know.
Mhm.
They yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like
It's
for
incredible.
as someone who's like also dealt with like Christian trauma, like I went to Catholic school, so like seeing those was definitely like a cathartic moment. Um, and yeah, it was just like in the wake of all the residential school stuff, and then like shortly after, like Queen Victoria was toppled as well. Uh,
Yes, yeah.
so that was a really like yeah cathartic time for all of us. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. I just like watched those videos, like looped them over and over again. Um, but yeah, so it's yeah, the whole work connects to the series because these church burnings are actually far more metal than the church burnings that we typically associate with metal. It's incredible. I'm so happy to have been alive to see this. Um, but yeah, I think it also plays into more broadly about how we need to be challenging Christian supremacy and specifically Christian dominionism, which is the like Christo-fascist, ultra-capitalist brand of Christianity that has been rising in the U.S. for some time now and is very much taking hold. Um, yeah, we need to be challenging that whenever and wherever possible. Um, there's a great book about this, Christian Fascists, The Christian Right and the War on America by Chris Hedges. This was written over like 10 years before Trump was even elected. And a lot of this has come true. It's been very prophetic. It's really scary. Um, but yeah, I guess it also links to my values and I guess somewhat of my identity as a non-theistic Satanist. For those who don't know, non-theistic Satanism, it's like a tool of activism. It's not actual like people who believe in Satan. It's just using the idea of Satan as a tool to challenge Christian supremacy. Because Satan is like one of the only adversaries that, if not the only adversary that the church cannot dismiss. Because if Satan doesn't have any power, they have no leverage over their own congregations. So um, yeah, they use Satan to challenge Christian supremacy. There was a really famous case in the States about like 10 years ago where they had a statue of Baphomet put up on next to a state capitol because they had just put up a statue of the Ten Commandments. They're like, well, if you can do this for this religion, you should be able to do it for ours as well. Also, Satan is just another member of the Christian myth. So yeah.
Yeah, the political
Yeah.
advocacy of like Satanism is like it's huge.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so much
Um,
power.
yeah, so that's basically like the all of the stuff behind that. And then, of course, yeah, we projected flames onto the silhouettes of the churches. And yeah, Jay Mez did the projection mapping for that. And yeah, one of my closest friends, Laura Lewis, helped me with the mural painting. And
And you did
yeah,
so fast. It was so
yeah,
fast.
it went so quickly. I was not expecting that.
But yeah, like what you're saying about the like say Satan and the Christian church, you know, like the history of patriarchy, right? Like it was
Mhm.
used, like Satan and the devil was used to like demonize indigenous cultures like all over the world and like
Exactly.
traditional like pagan cultures. And so like if that was used as a tool to like dismantle those traditional ways, it can be reversed and like used as a way to like rebuild that. And that's kind of why paganism is like really cool to me too. Like as an
Hmm.
indigenous person, like I'm very supportive of like pagans. There's a new agey like denominations of that, but that have questionable things. But like for the
Yeah.
most part, like I get excited about people doing that work because to me it is ultimately decolonial and in a very ancient way, right? A very old way. So yeah, super cool. I love slash and burn. It's
Yeah, I mean,
um
if we're all opposed to Christian supremacy, even if we're like not indigenous or not pagan, like if you want basic autonomy, you're gonna get called a Satanists anyway. Like under Christian dominionism,
yeah.
we're all gonna get called Satanists at some point. So you may as well use it to your advantage.
All of our sacred sites got named like Devil's Point or like Devil's Lake, that sort of thing. I
And yeah.
remember I
Oh, sorry. Go
remember
ahead.
like Wilfred Buck saying like when he was in Catholics or in residential school and the teacher saying like your grandparents are going to go to hell because of their traditional beliefs, and he said you're telling me my grandpa who loves and cares for us is going to hell, and then he's like, well, that's where I want to be. Then, right?
Yeah, that's where all my friends will be. So I would be
Yeah.
happy to join them.
So one thing that like stood out for me is like you're talking about the church burnings being far more metal than what the black metal scene was doing, and I think that's a really big um like theme in this exhibition is like BIPOC, trans, two-spirit, gender diverse people in the scene actually being far more metal than than the people that seem to like dominate it, right? And
Mhm.
so that makes me think about like the demon, like the theme of the demon, and that idea that like rather than the fans being possessed by the bands, it's actually the opposite way around. So can you talk a little bit about that, like the demon and its role in the show? Um,
Yeah. Okay. So, um, yeah, there's a lot to this one. Because firstly, um, when I was in art school, and then when I was doing the honors program in my final year, I was really unpacking like extreme expressions of fandom and this like kind of like idolatry that we assign to artists and celebrities, and the like this like weird phenomenon, like mass phenomenon of having these like screaming wild fangirls, and I don't mean this in a way to like judge them. Like I'm fully guilty of that. I like use myself as the primary subject in unpacking this. um I literally moved to another country because of a band. um um but yeah, so I had a series of paintings, which kind of started when I was in Finland, but then really got into when I came back and did my honors, um, where I took the fan and isolated them from the setting of the show and being in the audience. And yeah, just wanted to um, show how ambiguous these like extreme emotions are when you take away the context of the situation. Um, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, are you allowed to share? Try it and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, I'll um
Is
okay,
that
perfect.
working?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is part of these two paintings are a diptych. It's called Devotion May Cause Side Effects. Um, I did these while I was in Finland, and they are the reference images were of Beatles fangirls, um, which is one of the first instances where we saw like this phenomenon happen on like a wide scale. Um, and yeah, I did them in these like unnatural skin tones and stuff to kind of highlight the like horror aspect. Um, this color palette specifically was also there's like a whole thing where I base this like color palette off of like the mood of a specific song and stuff. But yeah, I was like really inspired by horror imagery and like possession movies where like they're possessed by a demon or some sort of entity. But yeah, this painting here and this one here, they're both self-portraits, and they're based on selfies I took when I went to see him play on their farewell tour in Toronto, which was during my honors year. Um, and I distorted my facial proportions and yeah, played with the lighting and stuff to kind of create more of like a horror vibe. And yeah, these were the first paintings where I started blackening out the eyes, which is really key in my work now with corpse paint. Um, but yeah, then I ended up progressing to this painting here, Queen of the Damned, which I did in 2019, and this one, Intermission, which is from 2018, where these are based on images I took at shows. I believe this one was at the Helden Festival at Tavastia in Helsinki, which is where him used to play every year on New Year's Eve. And then this one was at Manitoba Metal Fest in 2018 or 2017, I think. But yeah, I was looking at like crowd interactions um, and again, thinking about kind of like the dehumanization of like these extreme emotions and like that possession aspect, but also like looking at how it is with a crowd. Um, and it's almost like a bit of like a zombie effect or yeah. And then I was also like really inspired by German expressionism with the paintings I did of the crowds. But yeah, this style of painting is what got me into the corpse paint. um I mean, I've always like loved playing with makeup and stuff, but yeah, the blackened out eyes and yeah, just like the starkness of just having the highlights of the face showing with everything else in shadow um, is what kind of led me down the road to getting into corpse paint in my paintings. Um, and yeah, of course, I was thinking about all of this when I was unpacking everything that I talked about before. Um, but yeah, this like visual language of this kind of like skeletal figures is something that we can like map back to like yeah, the expressionist period, like even further like with like skeletal figures and things. But I think the expressionists kind of like really played into that post World War One and Two. Um, and it's yeah, been very influential to what we now recognize as like Gothic visual culture today. And yeah, we now like see that in corpse paint. Um, so yeah, oh, these are unrelated. I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. and scroll down.
I think the expressionist themes are awesome too because it's like it was a response to like yeah like post World War I and then like rising fascism uh,
Hmm.
and yeah like the Kafkaesque stuff and like that era where it was like rising oppression, rising bureaucracy, um, and so I think that work fits really well with like yeah the themes of metal and like confronting those that in that scene. So
Yeah, and just like everyone was confronted with like the horrors of the first two world wars, there's like a real like loss of innocence, um, particularly for like colonial countries, where they would have been used to being disconnected from that kind of horror. Um, but yeah, so when I started thinking about, I wanted to subvert the like fan and idol dynamic. Um, like a as a way to kind of push back against like all of the people, so many of the people on the stage being like cis white men, um, and so many people of the scene being cis white men, but also to be like like you can like be your own hero essentially, and yeah, take the power back. And if we were thinking of it in terms of possession, to kind of just like conquer the demon, I guess. um so yeah, I started like playing with corpse paint, and um yeah, to try to embody that figure and to try to put myself in that position. So initially, I wasn't really sure where to start with corpse paint. I mean, I love a lot of the corpse paint designs of like the black metal guys and of like a more like extreme metal, but um like when you listen to them in interviews and stuff, and especially like having lived in a Nordic country, they're so quiet and reserved, which is something I loved about it. Um, and I just felt like to try to wear the paint of someone who I have a hunch is probably just like a very introverted nerd like me, the switch wouldn't be enough. So I actually started with Gene Simmons of Kiss because we're so radically opposite in personality and everything,
belief
and
systems.
values and everything, but also like because Kiss has a really strong global fandom that is like very very devoted. um yeah, they call themselves the Kiss Army. So yeah, I started playing around with Gene Simmons makeup, and this would have been in 2019, um, and tried to get into what is that vibe, or what is a way that I can occupy that vibe for myself. Um, so I'll share my screen again.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting with Gene Simmons too, with like the influence of like the New York Dolls on Kiss
Oh
and
yeah.
like how gender like you know yeah like wearing different gendery clothes at the
Hmm.
time in the early glam days, right, was
Yeah,
you
they
know
totally
it
played
was
with
it
gender.
was it was connected to queerness too because at that time in like the late 60s early 70s like I really like learning about that time because there was um an explosion of like a different understanding of like gender and sexuality that was like becoming mainstream.
Hmm.
um and then it kind of all that mainstream stuff got shut down by yeah like mainstream culture and then like the AIDS epidemic and stuff and the hysteria around that um but like the origins of even the even Kiss's makeup and stuff and connecting it to those that era of like experimenting with gender is kind of interesting.
It is. And there's this weird like dichotomy there as well because they're playing with gender and stuff, but they're all cis men. They're not trans or non-binary. They're taking it off. It's like a form of drag, but they're not really owning it as drag. And then simultaneously being like really misogynist. Like, I mean, if you look at the treatment
Being
of
horrible.
groupies, it's like they just treat
They're
women horribly. And yeah, there's this total disconnect between what they're doing and like actually connecting it to like gender politics. But yeah, so these are some photos I took in 2019. I did I did this thing like yeah, I had the makeup on and I didn't fill in the black. I left my skin showing because I thought you know like my skin is part of what sets me apart in this scenario. So I didn't fill in the black and I left my skin showing. And yeah, I took out the white as well, and was playing with negative space. And this isn't something I did beyond this couple of photos, but um, I still find it really interesting. Full disclosure to my family who are watching, there's like some brief nudity now. So you have been warned. Look away if you want. So this is another photo that I took when I was playing around with that. And yeah, I was trying to figure out I was trying to inhabit this totally different vibe of, I guess, yeah, becoming the idol, but then also like Gene Simmons is very sexual. And so I was trying to like play with that as well and like what might that look like for me. Yeah, it's definitely not my vibe. But yeah, this is how I was playing with that. And I've since connected it to this quote, which I want to share from uh, from Leela Taylor in Darkly. She has a line about being brown dots in a sea of white. And yeah, I'm now seeing how this connects to like this bit of work. But yeah, Gene Simmons, his character is called the Demon. So again, this is still fitting in with like the whole demon aspect. This is a photo my friend Aiden took of me during one of the lockdowns. We were roommates, and yeah, these are a couple images from that time when I was still playing with it, and trying to occupy the space in a more authentic way. I eventually developed my own corpse paint design, which you can see here. That is more authentically me. And yeah, the shapes in this one draw more influence from German Expressionism and from a bit from like mime and like sad clown makeup, and then a bit of like bat with the nose. But yeah, so that was kind of like, that's kind of how the demon has like evolved through it. And yeah, now of course it is like becoming the demon and like overcoming the possession and actually like embodying the thing itself.
So
Which
I
then
had a
links to
question.
Satanism.
I have a
Yeah.
question about that with the demon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like you're talking kind of about like the secular Satanism, um, but in terms of connecting to like indigenous ways,
Mm-hmm.
how do you see like the demon fitting into that? At least, you know, from my perspective, doing so much ceremony and stuff is like my secular lens has kind of faded away a bit. Like
Okay.
and and I, you know, I've thought about like, you know, our spirits and like things being animate as being like they're there, right? And our
Mm-hmm.
ancestors are here and that sort of stuff. And so, do you have any like perspectives of like the demon itself as a spirit in that realm?
I do. Yeah. I think I guess I'm like agnostic, I suppose. Although I've been an atheist for most of my life, so I think a lot of my worldviews are still primarily secular. But I guess in a strictly political sense, I think to be the demon is to challenge like colonial values and everything that has been imposed through colonization. Um, I think as long as you are actively working to decolonize in a very tangible way, um, you are embodying this kind of like demon thing because everything that is opposed to the church will be labeled as such. Um, but I also think if that is like an energy or something which animates us and fuels us, then that is still within you as well when you're doing that work. So, um, yeah, I think whatever it is still, I guess there is like, there can be like a spiritual aspect to it. Um, yeah, for those who haven't seen the show, I don't know, they weren't very prominent, but I made these Sinead O'Connor prayer candles, which I had on the stage during the Vagina Witchcraft performance. Um, and they're now part of the installation with the TV in the gallery and like my outfit and like some instruments, which are set up in place of the stage in the gallery right now. And I feel like if that's a thing, then it was like motivating Sinead, and it can be with us at the show.
Yeah, and I think like so there's installation. I wish I could share it with you right now. I'm trying to figure out if I have some images of that I can share, but there's um there's an installation in the middle of the space that has like leftovers from the performance. Um, and so there's like mic stand, like one of the candles like vibrated off the sub and like broke and like it splashed all over the sub. And there's Brianna's outfit that she wore during the event hanging up there, and I kind of realized it looked like an altar. Um, and that's kind of where I'm thinking about like, yeah, like there's an echo of that event and like an echo of that energy and that space, and it's gonna kind of live there for the duration of the exhibition. um and so yeah, like at the event I really did feel like there was like a solid energy in that place. Like it was amazing to see um like a safe space that's like a radical safe space for metal where like you it was primarily BIPOC folks um
Mm-hmm.
like owning that. And yeah, so I would like to know more about, yeah, like what's your relationship to Vagina Witchcraft and Kayla, and like why did you think that that show was important to have now at this exhibition?
Yeah, so I actually didn't meet Kayla in person until the day of the photo shoot, um, where we took the reference images that I used for the painting series. Um, I just like had them in mind when I was like really fleshing out the meat of this series. And um, I reached out to them um, as I was like writing the grant applications, and they gave me a letter of support. And yeah, we're on board from day one. Um, but yeah, I thought it was really important to have Kayla involved because like so much of the work is about like moving away from the position of the fan and like becoming the thing itself. And Kayla's already doing that. And the fact that like their songs are specifically about working through um, the manifestations of systemic oppression, of like racism and mental health issues and trauma. It's just it's too perfect, and yeah, I'm so honored. I'm incredibly honored and humbled that they were a part of this, and that yeah, it's just like so perfect that their last show was on the first night of my first solo show. It's just yeah, I couldn't have asked for that to work out any better than it did.
Yeah, we were so happy to host that show. We're so happy to host your exhibition too. It's a big deal, and I feel like it's a bit historic for Urban Shaman too. And yeah, like the message that having that show in our space is sending out to the rest of the community is really big. And I think there's going to be an echo and a reverberation of that, and like setting a bar. It's setting a bar of like expectation. Like this is what this is how our event should be. And like, these are the bands that need to be propped up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And supported, and um so it was amazing that Vagina Witchcraft's last show happened there, and I think um that project's done, right? But I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things might come out of this, like a lot of other new projects, and a lot of excitement, engagement. And I think that idea of the fan turning into the hero, um that's what this event is. I think that's what this exhibition and that's what that show is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
um I know every lover of music, like if you're a lover of music to a certain extent, you get to the place where you're starting to make it, right? You start to make
Yeah.
the music. So um yeah.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, it again, it ties back into like the whole element of like non-theistic Satanism too, because like be your own hero is like believe in yourself. And there's like yeah, there's like Christian propaganda and stuff that says like, Satan will tell you to believe in yourself. It's like, well, how is that such a crime? Like, okay, don't be a narcissist, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with having self-esteem and trusting your own judgment.
So okay, I want to talk about, there's one piece, your Diptych alter ego,
Mm-hmm.
um, that I really, it's super cool, and like the inversion. I was kind of curious about what that piece is about, and what does that inversion mean?
um yeah, so with that one, I feel like it's kind of been a process, um because the realistic half, um which I can pull up, was the first painting that I started in the series and the first one I finished. Um, so this is of Adrian Heward, who also performed on Thursday. Um, this was the first one I did, and this was one of my favorite poses. And I just love all of the texture in what they were wearing, and just the energy that they brought. And I wanted to do it again. Um, so what I did was I inverted it. I'm realizing now I don't think I have the final image pulled up. This is an in process photo of the other half. And so I flipped it horizontally and I also inverted the colors. And so I guess it is still playing with the themes of becoming the other, um, and like, becoming the other half or the opposite. Um, because it's just an inverse in both composition and in color. Um, and yeah, I felt like the title alter ego is just also working with that dichotomy. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and Adrian Heward is like such a great model for that piece too. Just who Adrian is and like all the work that they do with
Mhm.
drag and
Yeah,
a
and
lot
they're
of
two spirit, and yeah, so there's still that element of two working together.
Hmm. Is there are there any other works that you want to talk about in that list? Like I'm really
Yeah.
curious about the monochromatic stuff.
Okay.
And you kind of talked about that. You kind of talked about that earlier with your more expressionist stuff, and how like you're kind of referencing like yeah the unnatural skin tones and colors based off certain songs. So yeah, like I felt like the monochromatic stuff had a great contrast
Mhm.
to the full color work in the show.
Yeah, so the monochromatic stuff, which for those who haven't seen yet, I have a couple paintings where they are primarily red. And it's not a color I've worked with a ton. I guess I've usually leaned more into like oranges and greens to kind of get like a lurid and like acidic palette. Um, but I had and initially when I started this series, I wanted to totally go away from that and have a very minimalist, fairly realistic palette, which I think is reflected in most of the paintings in the series. I wanted the model's skin tone to be like the main pop and everything else to kind of just to not distract from it. But I did use this like lime green and this like candy apple red in some of the underpaintings. Um, and I just really leaned into the red for a couple of them. And yeah, this is one of them. This is called The Eruption. This is a portrait of Jessica Kennard. Um, and um, yeah, I really loved it. There are only three colors in this. There's just white for the foam and a bit of the what little of the corpse paint is showing, and then the skin tone, which you can see a bit in the exposed skin and in the belly. But the clothes, the background, the beer can, and all of the shadows are just in red. And so I created highlights and shadows just by just with like washes and then building up to a thick impasto. Um, so the like really dark red that you see, it's actually just a very thick application of the paint, and the highlights within the red are just a light wash. Um, and yeah, I really like this. I think I'm going to keep going with it.
Yeah, and the content of the work is really cool. Like the like using models who are your friends,
Mhm.
and people in the community. I felt like, um, because we all know each other. We all
Yeah.
know each other, and like I've worked with Jessica Kennard in the past, and we've known each other for years. We swapped jobs once.
Oh,
Um,
really?
when I was at Art City, um, and Jessica was I can't remember which jobs we switched, but we went oh yeah, the wrench. I was the um Indigenous coordinator at the wrench, and then Jessica was like the Indigenous coordinator at Art City, and we swapped jobs. That's kind of funny. But yeah, like we know everybody in the pieces, and I think that was part of the power of the show too, is like recognizing the power that we have as like a community, and that like we're supporting each other, but we also are like our heroes, like we are each other's heroes.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, like I just kind of want to know about your process, like reaching out to people and how the process of photography and getting the face paint stuff ready, like how did that work?
Yeah, so okay, I've got some good process images throughout making this series, which I dug up last night. Um, yeah, so I've yeah, I've basically like used this series as a way to build kin and like to build kinship, specifically with like other indigenous people, because I have been culturally disconnected. um, and I think like part of my wariness, due to my own like religious trauma, has made me very skeptical of like getting too into ceremony and stuff. So I've used subculture as a way to build kinship, with other indigenous folks. And so yeah, I had Kayla in mind, I had Adrian in mind, I had Jessica Kennard in mind from the beginning. Um, yeah, I didn't meet Adrian until like the pandemic. And that was through like pole dance. And um, Jessica, I've also known for years, through the art scene. And Jessie Januska, I didn't actually meet until, uh, I guess it was just before I started working on this series. And then I wanted her involved as well. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to be there on Thursday, because of an injury. But um, yeah, so I had reached out to all of them, as soon as I started writing the grants, and said like, do you want to be a part of this? If so, like, would you be able to write a letter of support? And everyone was fully on board, which was fantastic. Um, and then, yeah, in the summer of 2022, I arranged a photo shoot. My friend Luke Tokarik, took the photos, but like under my direction, I guess. Um, and then my friend Aiden Clowett, who took some of the previous Gene Simmons photos that I shared of me and like the kiss makeup. He was also there as well and took some behind the scenes shots. Um, yeah, so yeah, I did each model's corpse paint, and that was, their own custom design. They sent me pictures of what like designs that they liked, and then I incorporated those all together to make their own design. And I did their makeup, and then we had a photo shoot. Um, and yeah, so these were the beginnings of the reference images for the paintings. There's Kayla screaming. And then these are some of the images, ones that I didn't end up using. I was looking through all of them last night, and there's so much work that I could pull from these. Um, there were so many good shots, that would make really fantastic paintings. Um, yeah, there's still so much to work with.
Amazing.
And then yeah, I projected those onto my panels. Oh, here's the inverse, of the other half of alter ego. I inverted the image in Photoshop and projected that. Um, and then, yeah, use that as the reference for the painting moving forward. Um, yeah, there's the reference image for the eruption. And so I just did an underpainting and a light wash. So this is the underpainting for my self-portrait, We Bloom and Gloom. And then, yeah, from there, yeah, just started building them up. Here are some process photos. Here's under a blood moon, with the background done, but just the underpainting of the figure. This is Inward Scream, in like in progress. There it is a bit later on, because I did the backgrounds first and then did like the key pieces of the face and then filled in like the edges and the hair afterwards. They all had this like phase where they all looked kind of like bald and with like weirdly shaped heads, which was quite funny. And then just with my process with the mesh clothing, because there were a few paintings where there's mesh clothing, which is like makes for really beautiful painting, but just for myself as a painter, I was really, it's just so, it's adding so many steps to the process. And so I do like the skin first, then the tattoos, then the mesh on top, but then that makes for some very funny progress shots where it's just like this very strangely shaped figure. Um, oh, here's one of Kayla where I did the eyes first and worked my way out. And there's another one where I the background done but hadn't and just had the underpainting showing. I was really tempted to leave this one to just clean it up and leave it like that because I think this would have been interesting as well. But yeah, there it is finished. This one's Fairies Wear Boots, which is a Black Sabbath reference. But yeah, through this whole process, it's just been a way to like, I don't know, maybe because I'm like so introverted, I needed like an excuse to reach out to people and needed like a project. But yeah, it's just been a way to like build bonds. And yeah, it's been a really beautiful process. Um, yeah, and then I guess
It really showed at Vagina Witchcraft how strong the bonds were with your community around you.
yeah.
Yeah, like it felt like such a beautiful community to be a part of. And
Mhm.
that's all I want to do now. I don't want to
Yeah.
go to any more music festivals. I'm done. I just want to do this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're gonna rebrand as Club Shaman. Uh,
That would be sick.
it looks like we're at 2, so we've done a full hour. So I'm gonna open it up for questions. I think we can only really do like 10 minutes of questions. But first I wanna promote Brianna's mom's GoFundMe, help Bobby makes ends meet. So if you have some time or a little bit extra money, it'd be great if you could donate to help Bobby, Brianna's mom, you know, trying to make ends meet, struggling with long-term disability. So yeah, I don't know if you want to share about that. We didn't get to share about that at the show. So,
Yeah, I know you asked me about it, but I was literally weeping through the whole vagina witchcraft set, so I would have just ended up blubbering into the microphone.
oh, just a second, I have to go to my door.
Okay. But yeah, I made a GoFundMe for my mom. She lives with multiple disabilities and is on a fixed income. And for the last 2 years has also been dealing with long COVID, which for those who don't know, it can be extremely debilitating and it's inhibited her ability to supplement her income through leather work, which is what she was doing before. But yeah, I saw one person did donate on on Thursday. Thank you to that person. That's very generous. Um, yeah, and I guess I also just want to say thank you to like all of my collaborators, like of course like the models for being involved, but also like most of my close friends were involved in this process, at least a little, if not significantly. Like from day one, and yeah, they've also been just like an incredible support system through this process, because it's been a lot. It's a lot to make this many paintings of this size while having a full-time day job and trying to be a human being. Um, and yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to them for all of their help.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Brianna, for having the exhibition at Urban Shaman, and you were such a pleasure to work with. Um, you have the experience of being an arts administrator, and like you've done this before on the other side, on my side, right? So
Yeah, this is my first time being in this side, but I've done all the other jobs.
yeah, so Brianna was amazing to work with and so prepared, and it was so easy. And we couldn't have pulled it off to this level, without having that good working relationship that we had. So
Mhm.
I appreciate that, and I'm so excited for you um for this show, and I really hope it continues on. So the exhibition is going until December 14th. So if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, you have a lot of time to stop by. So yeah. Miigwech, Kininiskotamin. Thank you so much. I'm gonna open up for questions, just brief questions. So if anyone has something, you can put up your hand. You can turn on your mic on your video if you want and scream, whatever you want to do. So we got congrats, Brianna, from Sarah. Amazing work.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Heart, 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 heart. Any questions? Does anyone want to scream? Great. Well, everyone's still hungover from the show, so that's
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, if for those who came late, I said at the beginning I'm recovering from COVID, which is why I've been so short of breath through the talk. Um, and yeah, I was, I don't know, I was barely well enough to go to the performance night on Thursday, but I just double masked and I went and I'm so glad I did, but yeah, I can't imagine not being there for that. I was not emotionally prepared to stay home. So I'm glad I decided to go, but I've been paying for it since then.
Oh yeah, just so everyone knows, we postponed the reception, so it's going to be next First Fridays on December 6th from 5 to 9 p.m. So if you have a chance to come out, Brianna will be there, and have a little bit of a meet and greet. We had First Fridays yesterday and we had a good turnout too, which is nice. And so yeah, Jean said incredible work. Adrian said heart, heart, heart. Jennifer Gibson, congratulations. What a fantastic artist talk. Can't wait to see the show. Julie Gendron, love you. Such great work. Love the talk. So yes, thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you around, and make sure you stop by to see the exhibition before it ends. So we've got a lot of time. Any last words, Brianna?
Yeah, just thank you again to everyone. Thank you for coming to the performance night and yeah, thank you to everyone at Urban for giving me this platform and yeah, giving me a space to showcase my weird art. Yeah, I'm so grateful. And yeah, again, we're having like an opening reception or I guess kind of closing reception, I guess, on the next First Friday, December 6th. And um, yeah,
Weird, aka
I'll
much
be
needed
there
work.
and um, and yeah, just thank you. I hope to see you at the opening reception slash closing reception in December.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Kininiskotamin Miigwech.